"Sit down, this manuscript is a waste of everyone's time." Those were the exact words the senior editor said into the microphone. The ballroom went dead quiet. 400 people held their breath. And the woman standing on that stage, the black author he had just humiliated in front of the entire New York publishing industry, didn't move. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just slowly opened her manuscript to the last chapter. She looked at him. She looked at the crowd. And she started to read. 30 seconds later, a gasp moved through the room like a wave. A literary agent in the third row dropped her wine glass. The editor's face turned white, and the CEO of the entire publishing house stood up so fast his chair hit the floor. Because what this author read out loud that night did not just destroy the editor's career. It exposed a secret that the publishing world had buried for 30 years, and it was all about him. Before we go any further, if you believe that talent should never be silenced by someone's skin color, smash that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this need to be heard. Now let me take you back to how this night started. Her name was Amara Johnson, 34 years old, a single mother from a small apartment in Brooklyn. For 7 years, she worked 2 jobs. During the day, she cleaned offices in Manhattan. At night, she worked the register at a 24-hour diner on Flatbush Avenue. And between those 2 shifts, usually between 2 and 5 in the morning, she wrote. She wrote at her kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee next to her. Her daughter Zuri, who was 9 years old, used to fall asleep watching her mother type on an old laptop that had a cracked screen and a missing E key. Amara had to copy and paste the letter E every single time she needed it. For 7 years. That was how she wrote her novel. The book was called The Weight We Carry. It was a story about 3 generations of black women in America. It was about pain, but it was also about joy, love, and the strength that gets passed down from mother to daughter. Amara did not write it to be famous. She wrote it because her grandmother, before she died, told her, "Baby, our stories matter. Don't let anyone tell you different. You write it for us." Amara sent the manuscript to 47 literary agents. 42 did not respond. 4 sent polite rejection emails. And one, a woman named Rebecca Klein, read the first 3 chapters at 2 in the morning and could not put it down. Rebecca cried at the end of chapter 3. She called Amara the next morning and said, "I don't know who you are, but I am going to fight for this book with everything I have." Rebecca was true to her word. She submitted the manuscript to every major publishing house in New York, and then came the invitation that changed everything. The annual Manhattan Literary Showcase. It was the biggest event in American publishing. Every major editor, every big agent, every CEO attended. Each year, they invited a small group of new authors to come on stage and read a passage from their work. The publisher who liked what they heard could offer a book deal on the spot, and Amara Johnson had been invited. When Rebecca called her with the news, Amara was standing in her kitchen washing dishes. She dropped the plate. It shattered on the floor. Zuri came running in. Amara was just standing there with soapy water dripping down her hands, tears streaming down her face. She whispered to her daughter, "Baby, Mama is going on a stage in Manhattan." And Zuri, 9 years old, hugged her mother's waist and said, "See, Mama, I told you they would see you." Amara had 2 weeks to prepare. She borrowed a dress from her sister. She practiced reading her chapter out loud in the bathroom mirror every night after Zuri went to sleep. She had no idea that the editor assigned to review her work that night had already decided, before even hearing one word, that she did not belong in that room. The ballroom at the Sterling Hotel was packed. 400 people, crystal chandeliers, waiters in white gloves carrying trays of champagne. The stage was set up with a single wooden podium and a microphone. Behind the podium, 4 senior editors sat at a long table. They would listen to each author read and decide if they wanted to offer a deal. The lead editor was named Walter Hensley, 58 years old. White hair, gold watch, expensive suit. He had been in the publishing industry for 35 years. He was known as one of the most powerful editors in New York. He was also known, quietly among black authors and agents, for something else. In 35 years, Walter Hensley had signed exactly 2 black authors, and both of them had been dropped from his list within 1 year. Rebecca had warned Amara that morning. She said, "Walter is on the panel tonight. Whatever he says, do not let him get in your head. You are talented. Your book is beautiful." Amara nodded. She thought she understood. She did not. There were 6 authors invited to read that night. Amara was scheduled to go 5th. The first 4 authors all went well. 2 of them even received offers for book deals right there on stage. Amara sat at table 42 near the back of the room, watching. Her hands were shaking. Rebecca was next to her, whispering, "You've got this." And then it was her turn. The host called her name. Amara Johnson, debut novel, The Weight We Carry. She stood up. She smoothed her dress. She walked to the stage. She reached the podium. She took one deep breath. She opened her manuscript to the passage she had practiced for 2 weeks. And then Walter Hensley leaned forward, right into his microphone, and spoke. "Before you read anything, let me save us all some time." The room went completely silent. Amara froze. Walter continued. "I have looked at your manuscript. The market is flooded with this type of story right now. Single mother, struggle, hardship, black women in America. It has all been done. It has been done better. Sit down. This manuscript is a waste of everyone's time." A gasp moved through the ballroom. Rebecca stood up halfway out of her chair, ready to march to that stage herself. But something stopped her, because Amara had not moved. Amara stood at the podium. Her chin was still up. But inside, something was happening that nobody in that room could see. She was thinking about her grandmother. She was thinking about Zuri, back home in Brooklyn, watching television with the babysitter, waiting for her mother to call with good news. She was thinking about every 2 in the morning at that kitchen table, copying and pasting the letter E. She was thinking about every rejection email. Every time someone had looked at her and decided, before she even opened her mouth, that she was not the right kind of person for their room. And then she looked at Walter Hensley. And she saw a man who had said these same words, probably in these same rooms, to other writers who looked like her, for 35 years. And every single one of them had probably sat down. Every single one of them had probably walked off that stage and gone home and cried and put their manuscript in a drawer. And nobody had ever held him accountable. Until tonight. Amara did something that nobody in that ballroom expected. She smiled. It was a calm smile, the kind of smile a person has when they have finally stopped being afraid. She leaned into the microphone and she said, in a voice that was steady and clear, "Mr. Hensley, with all due respect, I have been working on this book for 7 years. I was invited to this stage by this organization, and I am going to read my chapter. If you do not want to listen, you are welcome to leave. But I am not sitting down." The ballroom exploded, not with applause, with shock. 400 people sat straight up in their chairs. The other 3 editors turned and stared at Walter. Walter's face went from pale to bright red. He opened his mouth to say something, but Amara had already lifted her manuscript and started to read. And the moment her voice filled that microphone, everything in that room changed. The passage she had practiced for 2 weeks was from the middle of the book. A safe passage. A beautiful passage about a mother braiding her daughter's hair on a Sunday morning. But when she lifted her manuscript that night, she did not turn to that passage. She turned to the last chapter, the one she had never read out loud to anyone. The last chapter was different from the rest of the book. It was not fiction. Not really. It was based on something real. Something that had happened to Amara's mother, Gloria Johnson, 30 years earlier. Gloria had also been a writer, a talented one. In the early 1990s, she had written a manuscript about her life growing up in the South. She had submitted it to a small publishing house in New York. A young editor had taken her manuscript, told her it was not good enough, and sent her home. 6 months later, that same editor published a book by a different, more established author. And certain passages in that book, certain scenes, certain sentences, were almost word for word from Gloria Johnson's manuscript. Gloria did not have the money to sue. She did not have the connections to fight. She took the loss, she stopped writing, and she died 10 years later. That young editor in the early 1990s had gone on to become one of the most powerful editors in the industry. His name was Walter Hensley, and Amara Johnson had written the last chapter of her novel about it. Names, dates, manuscript titles, exact passages side by side. All of it. She had spent 2 of those 7 years just doing the research. She had never told Rebecca that the last chapter was real, because she was not sure she would ever have the courage to say it out loud, until a man with a gold watch and a microphone told her that her work was a waste of everyone's time. Amara started to read. Her voice was steady. She read about a young woman in the early 1990s who sat down at a kitchen table and wrote a manuscript about her life. She read about the editor who took that manuscript and sent her home. She read about the book that came out 6 months later. She read the 2 passages side by side, the stolen sentences and the original ones, word for word. And by the 3rd minute, the entire ballroom understood what was happening. A literary agent in the 3rd row, a woman who had known Gloria Johnson personally 30 years ago, dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor. Nobody turned to look. They were all looking at Walter Hensley. Walter's face had gone from red to completely white. He was gripping the edge of the table with both hands. The CEO of the entire publishing house, a woman named Elena Shaw, was sitting at table 1. Elena Shaw had known Gloria Johnson. She had always wondered what had happened to Gloria's manuscript. And now, in front of 400 people, she was finding out. Elena Shaw stood up so fast her chair hit the floor behind her. Amara kept reading. She read for 11 full minutes. And when she finished, she closed the manuscript. She looked at Walter Hensley and she said one sentence. That woman in the chapter, Mr. Hensley, was my mother. Her name was Gloria Johnson, and I have spent the last 7 years writing the book she was never allowed to write. You told me tonight that my story was a waste of time. I think the room disagrees. The first person to stand up was Elena Shaw, the CEO. She walked slowly and deliberately from table 1 to the stage. 400 people watched her. She climbed the 3 steps up to the podium. She took the microphone from Amara's hand with a gentle smile. She turned to face the room, and she said, Walter Hensley, effective immediately, you are terminated from this company. Security will escort you out of this building tonight. Every manuscript you have ever acquired will be reviewed by our legal team starting Monday morning. And I would like to personally apologize to the family of Gloria Johnson. And to Amara Johnson, her daughter, I would like to offer, right now on this stage, the biggest book deal this company has offered a debut author in the last 10 years. The ballroom exploded again, this time with applause, standing ovation. 400 people on their feet. Amara stood there with tears running down her cheeks. Walter Hensley was being quietly escorted out a side door by 2 men in dark suits. Within 48 hours, the story had hit every major newspaper in the country. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN. The headline was everywhere. Debut black author exposes decades of theft in publishing industry. Within 1 week, 3 other authors, all of them black women, had come forward with similar stories about Walter Hensley. Their manuscripts had been taken. Their ideas had appeared in books by other authors. None of them had ever been able to prove it, until Amara Johnson stood on that stage. Walter Hensley was stripped of every award he had ever received. The publishing house set up a foundation, named after Gloria Johnson, dedicated to supporting black women writers. And The Weight We Carry was published 8 months later. It sold 100,000 copies in the first week, 1 million copies in the first year. It was translated into 23 languages. It was nominated for the National Book Award. And the foreword in every edition read, "For my mother, Gloria Johnson, who taught me that our stories matter." I wrote it, Mama. I finally wrote it. 1 year after that night, Amara Johnson was standing on a different stage. This time it was at a small community center in Brooklyn. She was hosting a free writing workshop for young women of color. There were 40 of them in that room. Some as young as 13, some as old as 70. Zuri, now 10 years old, was sitting in the front row. Amara looked at her daughter. She looked at the 40 women and girls in that room. And she said, somebody somewhere is going to tell you your story is a waste of time. When they do, I want you to remember one thing. Your story has never been told, because only you have lived it, and only you can write it. So when they tell you to sit down, you do not sit down. You stand up, you open your book, and you read. A young woman in the 3rd row raised her hand. She could not have been more than 17. She said in a voice that was shaking, Miss Johnson, I have been writing a book for 2 years. But every time I show it to someone, they tell me it is not good enough. How do I keep going? Amara walked down from the small stage. She knelt in front of that young woman. She took her hand. And she said, baby, the people who told my mother her book was not good enough were wrong. For 30 years they were wrong. And the only reason anyone knows they were wrong now is because I did not stop writing. So do not stop. That night, Amara took Zuri home, a nice house in Brooklyn now. A real office, a real desk, a real laptop with all the letters working. Zuri went to bed. Amara sat at her desk. She pulled out a faded photograph of her mother. She looked at it for a long time. Then she whispered, we did it, Mama. We did it. Amara Johnson's story is not just a story. In a slightly different form, it has happened thousands of times. In publishing, in music, in film, in every creative industry in America. Talented voices of color have had their ideas taken, their work dismissed, their worth questioned, for generations. And the only reason we know about Walter Hensley now is because one woman with everything to lose refused to sit down when she was told to. The question this story leaves us with is simple. How many Walter Hensleys are still out there, deciding whose voice gets heard and whose does not? And how many Amara Johnsons are sitting at kitchen tables right now, at 2 in the morning, writing on a broken laptop, waiting for someone to give them a chance. Every time one of them stands up, the door opens a little bit wider for the next one. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your worth is not something that a man with a gold watch gets to decide. Do not let anyone tell you different. Write it for yourself, for the people who came before you who never got the chance. If this story moved you, please do 3 simple things. Hit that like button. It helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it tonight. Leave a comment below and tell us, has someone ever tried to silence your voice, and how did you respond? And finally, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell because we tell stories like this every week. Share this story with somebody in your life who is waiting for permission to stand up. Let this be their sign. Remember, your story has never been told because only you have lived it, and only you can write it. So write it. Thank you for watching.